Welcome, friends, disciples, and devotees. Today, I will read only from Mother, because what she has written to us is so important and especially relevant to our situation in these current months. Mother was asked the question, why is there ill will? And she answers, my child, it is as though you asked me why there is inconscience, ignorance, darkness in the nature. It is the why of the world you are asking me. Why is the world like this and not otherwise? There are people who have written volumes on the subject, and each one explains it in his own way. And that changes nothing, in fact. You may ask me, why is there ill will? Why is there ignorance? Why is there stupidity? Why is there wickedness? Why is there all the evil? Why is the world not a very charming place? All the philosophers explain it to you, each in his own way. The materialists explain it in their way, the scientists explain it in their way, but nobody in all that can find the means of getting out of it. And after all, the one thing that's truly important is it would be precisely to find the way so that there may no longer be any ill will. That would be worth the trouble. If you tell me, why is there suffering? Why is there misery? What can that do to you, this why, unless it be a means of finding a remedy? But I don't believe it would. For we have said that here. If you seek for the why, you will find within yourself simply all sorts of explanations, which will be more or less useless and will lead you nowhere. The fact is that it is so, isn't it? And the second fact is that one doesn't want it thus. And the third is to find the means that it may no longer exist. That is our problem. The world is not as we think it ought to be. There are lots of things in the world which we do not approve of. Well, there are people who like what they call knowledge very much and begin to inquire why it is like that. In a way, this is very well. But as I said, it would be much more important to find out what to do so that it may be otherwise. This is exactly the problem the Buddha put to himself. He sat under a tree, it is said, until he found the solution. But his solution is not very good. For when you tell me the world is bad, well, his solution is do away with the world. For whose benefit? As Sri Aurobindo has written somewhere. then the world will no longer be bad, for it will not exist. But what is the use of its no longer being bad, since it will not exist? It is a very simple logic. It is like those who want the whole world to return to its origin. And so Sri Aurobindo answers, you will be the all-powerful master of something that no longer exists, an emperor without an empire, or a king without a kingdom. That's all. It is one solution, but there are better ones. I believe we have found better ones. Some say that ill will comes from ignorance. That was exactly what the Buddha claimed. And that if ignorance disappeared, there would no longer be any ill will. There are others who say that ill will comes from division, separation. That if the universe were not cut off from its origin, there would be no ill will. Others still say that it is ill will which is the cause of everything, of separation and ignorance. And so there arises the problem. Whence does it come, this ill will? If it were at the origin of everything, it was then in the origin of everything. And there we are altogether at a loss, my children. We could speculate upon this for years. We shall never get out of it. And so those who push it so far finish by telling you, ill will doesn't exist. It is an illusion. And that's simply because they stop midway in their reasoning. For if they went a little farther, they might say, perhaps it is a human invention, this ill will. That is possible. But there is a way out of the difficulty. You will see all these conceptions and this idea that you have are based upon one thing, an entity that you call God, and a world that you call His creation. And you believe these are two different things, one having made the other, and the other being under the first, being the expression of what the first has made. Well, that is the initial error. If you could feel deeply that there is no division between that something you call God and this something you call His creation, if you said it is exactly the same thing, and if you could feel that what you call God, perhaps it is only a word, what you call God suffers when you suffer. He does not know when you do not know. And that it is through this creation, little by little, step by step, that he finds himself again, unites with himself, is realizing himself, expressing himself. And it is not at all something he wanted in an arbitrary way or made like an autocrat, but that it is the growing expression, developing more and more of a consciousness that is objectifying itself to itself, then there is no other thing but the sense of a collective advancing towards a more total realization, a self-awareness of knowledge consciousness. No other thing but that, a progressive self-awareness of knowledge consciousness in a total unity, which will reproduce integrally, again, which will reproduce integrally the original consciousness. That changes the problem. Only it is a little difficult to understand, and one must make a little more progress. Instead of being like a little child that kneels down, joins its hands, and says, "My God, I pray to thee, make me a good child, so that I may never hurt my mother." That, of course, is very easy. And indeed, I cannot say that it is bad. It is very good. Only there are children with whom these things do not work, because they say, "Why should I ask you to make me good? You should make me good without there being any need of my asking you for it. Otherwise, you are not nice." It is very good when one has a simple heart and does not think much. But when one begins to think, it becomes more difficult. But if you had by your side someone to tell you, instead of that, instead of lighting a candle and kneeling down before it with your hands folded, light a flame in your heart, and then have a great aspiration towards something more beautiful, more true, more noble, better than all I know. I ask that from tomorrow I begin to know all these things, all that I cannot do, I begin to do, and every day a little more. And then, if you throw yourself out a little, if for one reason or another you are put in the presence of such misery in the world, if you have friends who are unhappy or relatives who suffer, or you meet any kind of difficulties, then you ask that the whole consciousness might be raised altogether towards that perfection which must manifest, and that all this ignorance that has made the world so unhappy might be changed into an enlightened knowledge, and all this bad will be illumined and transformed into benevolence. And then, as far as one can, as far as one understands, one wishes it with all one's heart. And indeed, that can take the form of a prayer, and one can ask. Ask of what? Ask of that which knows. Ask of that which can. Ask of all that is greater and stronger than oneself to help, so that it may be thus. And how beautiful those prayers would be. As we collectively endure this phase in human history, yet again pushing us to rise to the summits of our being. Instead of asking why, let us turn our consciousness to that higher source which knows and which acts, and pray for that which is closest to your soul. Let the intuitions from above and within bring forth the seeds of change in the collective consciousness. Namaste, all. With my love and prayers at the feet of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Namaste.